is.
And Martha Jane Vinson is your first line on Little Lucy's journey.
Okay. This goes back to my mother's dad and mom, I guess. My mother's.
Yeah, because then we got Martha, Lucy, Will, Clifford, and Verna.
Let's see. Here, 1888.
Mm-hmm. Born first child, Grover Cleveland. Or G. Cleveland, right?
Okay.
And then 1904, mother died. Old Selma Cemetery.
Salem.
Salem, okay.
Is that where we went?
1906. What?
Father married Ellie. Elby, okay, I see the B now. Elby. And Lucy and Grover were married.
All right, now I had a picture somewhere of her dad and Elby.
I thought it was Vienna.
It's on the pen right
This
there.
is right here, we can see it. Or did you need it?
Yeah.
Would she be kin to, Virginia?
That's her Virginia.
This-
daughter's mother.
This
Okay,
is
she looks like
Virginia
Virginia to me.
and Viola's mother.
Okay, that's her mother.
Okay.
Yeah, cause that's all
And Grandpa,
Yeah.
Grandpa,
it is.
That's Barbara Virginia.
her dad,
Grandpa
Mother?
Davis. That's Grandpa Davis.
Is it?
my mother's dad,
Grandpa Davis.
JT. And he lived into his 90s. My mother's mother died somewhere on this chart,
1904.
1904. And then after a while, a few years, he married Elby Rigney, I believe her name was. She was a tall lady, rather proper, and my mother, Lucy, was a teenage at that time and had some other brothers and sisters, and they moved in. LB moved in as a stepmother to them, and Lucy was the oldest child, and she had to negotiate between the stepmother and the smaller children. I can imagine that would have been, under any circumstance, very, very much of a strain. But she come through it very well. And so with that situation, and then let's move on back.
Then we got Myrtle, 1907.
Okay. My charts are kind of mixed up, but she had married to Grover Cleveland.
Oh, yes,
It wasn't
sorry.
Pam.
And then her first little girl was when?
07. Myrtle.
07. Myrtle, Mama always said, was a perfect little child. And I'm sort of wanna believe that because she had a lot of them that wasn't perfect. Uh, She was a very beautiful little girl apparently and very sweet. And, she lived just a few years, 3 or 4 years, 4 or 5 years maybe. And, took some kind of a disease or a situation that she couldn't get over. So she died, and at the time she died was the time for my mother to deliver Verdi. She could not go to the funeral of her little girl because she was home having Verdi. And when did Verdi come along?
1910.
Verdi was born in 1910. And after Verdi was born, then we move on down to
Fred,
Fred come next in what,
1912.
1912. Didn't take them long to get two boys. Go on down.
Then Elton.
And what?
Elton,
Oh, yeah. Pretty soon Elton came, and when was he?
1915.
1915.
There we go. Okay.
And then the next child came,
And then they moved to Wicks, Arkansas.
all right. There's another chart that shows them making a big move over to Wicks, Arkansas. And there they had Verdi and Fred and Elton. And while they were at Wicks, they had a little girl born to them. And her name was Etta. And they had a tough time in Wicks. They went over there to farm, and they found that the farm that they moved on was full of trees and roots and rocks, and it was just almost impossible to farm. Daddy said he had an old horse that he carried, a plow horse, he carried over there with him, and they'd be trying to plow, and that plow had hung under a root, and that'd hold the old horse, and he'd pull him back and go again, get over the root. And he said about the third time that happened, the old horse just turned around and looked at it. He just thought, I don't know if we're gonna be able to do this or not. So after a few years in Arkansas, they decided that they couldn't hardly make it in Arkansas. So they moved back down to Golden, Texas. Most of you are familiar with Golden, and used part of their inheritance money to buy a place, about a 30-acre farm near Golden. And those were years that it was just, there just wasn't any money circulating. Nobody was working hardly, and if you had something to sell, you couldn't sell it because whoever wanted to buy it didn't have any money to buy it. And those were there was 2 years that Daddy had a note. He was not able to pay for the whole place there. And he owed some, and he was not able to pay the note. And the banker said, if you can just pay the interest this year, we'll let it go till next year. So they done their best to try to get some money together. And the next year, when the money came due, he just told the banker, he said, I still don't have the money. You can have the place back. And so he foreclosed and took the inheritance place away from Daddy and Mama. And they heard of this place across the street that they let them live there and truck farm, and there wouldn't be any rent due, but they'd take a third of the cotton and a fourth of the corn. But they wouldn't have to pay rent, so they moved over to the place that called the Moats Place. I know all of you have heard talk about the Moats Place. And after they moved back over there, and they had Bertie, they had Elton, Fred, Etta, and by that time they had been over there, then they had been busy still having some more children. Truman came along, and then I think he came in 1918, didn't he?
23,
23, and Lily,
25.
25. So they moved over there with the boys and 2 children that not much chance of making money. And in 1930, the market crashed, banks went under. It was just a terrible time for poor people to make a living. And to make things worse, in 1931, Mama told Daddy, I believe I'm gonna have another child.
Wonder who that might be.
And
The rest of the banks.
September 1931, well, it was time to deliver that child. I never did know if Mama had a doctor with her, having all those other children. I never heard of a doctor until she was about to deliver with me, and she told the boys to go up to Alba and get Dr. Farrington to come, that it was time for her to have the baby. The boys went up to Alba and found Dr. Farrington, and he said, oh, she can have that baby all right. He wouldn't come. So they came back and reported that the doctor wasn't coming. About that time, Mrs. Richardson, who was Joyce's mother, Joyce and Lily, Joyce's mother had walked about 1.5 miles across the fields and came over, and that night of September 1st, 1931, the 2 of them delivered the baby, and it never did amount to nothing. Uh, in 19 and times were bad all that time. I still remember Mama trying to deal with the Watkins man. Some of you probably haven't seen a Watkins man, but they used to peddle from a store, from a car, or I guess most of them had a car by that time, but they had all kinds of medicines and little treats and things that the farm people might trade with them. And Mama would occasionally trade him a couple of 3 or 4 hens for some liniment or something of that fashion. Bad times for poor people, but nobody complained. I don't know if it's on that list. Sometime in between the time they moved to the Moats place and the time I was born, my daddy was saved in a summer camp meeting. And the rest of his life, he served the Lord. And she was so proud of that, that he would go to church with her and participate. In, I believe, 1941, the Japanese decided that they didn't like the way we was acting, and they paid a surprise visit to a little island in the Pacific, Hawaiian Islands, and started a war. From the beginning of that war, things began to kind of loosen up. People were employed, and if you wanted a job, there was a job available. And Mama went through with all of that with us, and she had at that time she had delivered 8 children, and under primitive conditions, and made a success of it. She never lost any of us. Some of us took off and went to Tyler, but in various places to make a living. But getting on down there to where Grover died.
$52. Squirrel hunting.
No,
He does something like squirrel hunting.
that's the lady.
Okay. 66. He dies.
Grover died
Uh-huh.
in 1966.
Yes.
Daddy made the money that he made all his life was mowing yards. So far as I know, he never had a paycheck, but he managed to keep food on the table with mowing yards. And, in night, he, let's see, 1956, is that what when he died?
66.
66. And he was died in, he was born in 1886. So, what's that, about 80 years, it's almost, not
79.
quite 80 years that he lived. The boys and Homer Netta had pooled their money and built them a little house on the back of Truman's lot. And the last several years they lived there. And he mowed yards and picked up whatever he could. And Mama stuck with him all that time very well. He died, and she stayed there in the house. I think it says on there when she died, but about 10 years she lived in the house alone. Finally, she got to where she couldn't quite make it by herself. She never got to where she couldn't get around, get up and get down and go to the bathroom by herself, but she got to where she couldn't be depended on to cook and turn the stove off and do all those kind of things. And we started getting somebody to stay in with her part-time. And then later, somebody stayed in the house all the time with her. She never really enjoyed those ladies. They were kind of wanted their way and she wanted hers, but they managed to get through it. And she was able to get up to Central Baptist Church to visit and to attend. And she passed away in, what does it say there?
1978.
1978. She had laid down on the couch, according to the lady with her. And she rested for a while, raised up off of the couch, stood up and says, "Whoo!" and fell back on the couch. And the Lord took her on home. She was about a little bit over 90 years old. She had never give up on life, even though life had been very, very hard for her. We buried her in Pilgrim Rest number 2 by the side of Grover. And I believe that she was happily carried to be with the Lord. That's kind of the story of Grandma Lucy.
Tell us about